And thank you for joining us. The man at the center of a 14-year-old Lowcountry cold case back in a courtroom today, charged with murder in a 36-year-old New Jersey cold case.
Robert McCaffrey accused of killing Lisa Marie McBride back in 1990. Today, a detention hearing, a judge deciding whether he'll be allowed out of prison while he awaits that trial there.
On the morning of Saturday, June 23rd, 1990, a 27-year-old executive secretary in northwestern New Jersey failed to show up at the bank. Her brother drove out to her house. He used a spare key she kept under the front steps and let himself in. She was not there. The bed in the back bedroom had been stripped to the bare mattress. A folded washcloth sat on the headboard. Outside, the phone lines into the house had been cut. 2 slits had been made in a back window screen, and a short log was set on the ground below it. Her remains turned up 4 months later, 30 miles from the house. The cloth on the headboard carried DNA from 2 people, mixed too tightly for any lab in 1990 to pull apart. It sat in evidence in Sussex County for the next 36 years. Her brother spent every one of them asking the same question. Her name was Lisa Marie McBride. She was 27 years old, an executive secretary at Lakeland Bank in Newfoundland, and a 1981 graduate of West Milford High School. She lived alone at 118 Glen Road in the Highland Lakes section of Vernon Township. On the evening of Friday, June 22nd, 1990, Lisa finished her shift at the bank and rode into New York City with 3 friends for a concert. After the show, the group came back to New Jersey and stopped at Big John's pub on Old Route 23 in Newfoundland around 12:30 in the morning. According to police reports, she drank 3 bottles of beer, talked with several people at the bar, and gave her phone number to 3 old friends she ran into that night. She left around 1:15, saying she had to be at work in a few hours. The drive from the pub to her house was about 15 minutes on dark, quiet roads through the northwestern corner of the state. Neighbors saw her pull into her driveway just before 2 a.m. They saw her walk inside the house at about 2 o'clock. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. When she did not show up for her shift the next morning, a co-worker at Lakeland began calling around 7:30. The phone rang and rang. After several tries, the co-worker called the parents' house. From there, the call went to her brother, Doug. He got dressed and drove to her place. He pulled up to 118 Glen Road around 10 a.m. Her car was in the driveway, and at first he assumed she had gotten a ride somewhere with a friend. He walked up to the porch, let himself in, and called out her name. No answer. He moved through the front rooms. The couch in the living room had been pulled 6 inches off the wall, and the kitchen light near the refrigerator was on. When he reached the back bedroom, the dresser lamp was burning too. She wasn't in the house. Doug called the Vernon Township Police Department. Officers arrived, documented the scene, photographed every room, and walked the exterior with him. Her black leather purse was gone. So were her wallet, her New Jersey driver's license, her credit cards, and her house keys. On those keys was a small brass charm engraved with the letters "We Za." Before nightfall, the case was a missing person investigation. The search began that same day and didn't stop for months. Detectives from the New Jersey State Police Major Crime Unit, the Troop B Criminal Investigations Office, and the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office worked the case together. The FBI joined in. Officers canvassed the streets around Glen Road. Detectives retraced Lisa's path home from Big John's, hour by hour, and followed every tip that came in from the public. Posters went out across the region and as far as Canada. Federal investigators eventually interviewed hundreds of people. A $100,000 reward went up for any information that led to an arrest. 4 months went by without a single break. There were no confirmed sightings, no phone calls, and no use of any of her missing IDs or cards anywhere in the country. Then, at 9:30 in the morning on Saturday, October 20th, 1990, a hunter walking through the woods of the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area found human remains scattered under the canopy. He called troopers in, The site sat at the top of New Jersey along the Delaware River, off Old Mine Road in Sandyston Township, roughly 30 miles northwest of Highland Lakes. The drive from Vernon Township took the better part of an hour on rural roads through terrain that, outside hunting season, saw almost nobody. State police and the county medical examiner worked the recovery together. The remains were skeletal, with a fairly large rock sitting beneath them. Lisa's orthodontic retainer was found nearby, and dental records confirmed the identity. The remains were sent to the New Jersey State Medical Examiner's office in Newark for an autopsy. On November 7, 1990, the office released its findings. The examiner noted fractures on the left side of her face that matched blunt force trauma. Decomposition had been too far along to determine a cause of death. The ruling was homicide. State crime lab technicians had already worked the bedroom on Glen Road back in June, and they returned to the recovery site off Old Mine Road in October. From the washcloth on the headboard, they had pulled DNA from a second contributor, male. The lab confirmed a stranger had been there and stopped where the technology stopped. The prosecutor's office took the lead, with the New Jersey State Police Major Crime Unit and the Troop B Criminal Investigations Office running the work alongside Vernon Township detectives. Investigators worked outward from the night of June 22nd, starting with everyone Lisa had talked to that Friday. Each man she had given her number to at Big John's was tracked down and questioned. Every alibi held. None of them had any reason to know which house on Glen Road was hers. The suspect list widened. State and federal databases turned up nothing on anyone in Sussex County with prior violent or sexual offenses who fit. Co-workers from Lakeland Bank, friends and acquaintances from the pub, and anyone who had crossed paths with Lisa in the months before her death all ran through the file and got crossed off. Parole records covering recent releases for sexual assault or kidnapping with any tie to northern New Jersey turned up nothing either. Up at the dump site, the FBI took the lead because the body had been found on federal land. Agents worked the roads in and out of the area, asking park rangers, store clerks, and gas station attendants whether they remembered a vehicle in late June that did not belong to anyone local. Tips came in over the months that followed, helped along by the reward money. Most were vague. A handful pointed somewhere specific. One named a man supposedly seen near Highland Lakes the weekend of the disappearance. He turned out to have nothing to do with it. Another named someone with a prior conviction in a neighboring county. That lead collapsed the same way. By the end of the first year, hundreds of people had been interviewed, and the file had grown into thousands of pages of reports. None of what had left the house with the killer ever turned up. Investigators searched dumpsters and roadsides between Highland Lakes and the Delaware Water Gap, and got nothing. By the end of 1991, active work on the file had wound down. The cloth on the headboard had been sitting in evidence for less than a year and a half. It would sit there for another 34. As officers retired, new hands inherited the McBride paperwork. The routine ran the same way each time. Pull the old reports, look at the crime scene photographs, walk over to the lab to ask whether the technology had finally caught up to what the evidence needed. Testing on the cloth happened more than once. The first attempt came in the mid-1990s, the next in the early 2000s, and a third time later still with newer instruments. Each generation of equipment gave back the same answer the first had. Lisa would have been in her 30s when the first attempt was made, in her 40s when the next one was. By the time the FBI brought CODIS online in 1998, 8 years into the wait, investigators had a new question for the lab. Could the system match the male from the cloth against anyone arrested or convicted of a serious offense? Lisa's profile was in the database. His was nowhere in it. The McBride family kept Lisa's story in the public eye. They sat for newspaper interviews on the anniversaries and told reporters about the daughter they had lost. Lisa had grown up in West Milford. As a teenager, she had danced with the New Generation dance company in Wanake, and at 16, she performed with the troupe in Romania. She was a competitive amateur shooter and an avid hiker. On weekends, she had been taking classes at Rider College in Lawrenceville. She had bought her house on Glen Road on her own and had not missed a day at the bank for 3 years. In 2003, on the 13-year mark, George McBride sat for an interview with the Bergen Record about his daughter. "We're still handling the uncertainty," he said. "We still go on living. But we think of her on holidays, on birthdays, every day, really." Norma and George got older. Doug carried the calls in their place when they could no longer make them. He stayed in touch with every detective who took over the file. When one of them moved on, Doug introduced himself to the next. In 2020, troopers created a dedicated cold case unit, and the McBride file moved to the new team as one of the most well-known unsolved homicides in that part of the state. By 2019, the murder was 29 years old. Whoever had cut the phone line and slipped through the window on Glen Road in June of 1990 had been a free man for almost 3 decades. In that year, the prosecutor's office pulled the file for a full review. On February 5, 2019, detectives from the New Jersey State Police and the Vernon Township Police Department sat down with a witness who said he had information about the 1990 murder. In court papers, the witness is identified only as R.I. The state described him as a social and employment associate of the man whose name he had brought to the prosecutor. His name was Robert William McCaffrey, Jr. According to R.I., the two of them had been working a job site together in 1995, 5 years after Lisa was killed, when McCaffrey said it out loud. He had killed Lisa McBride because she would not go out with him. He had left something behind at the scene, and in the days after the murder, he had gone back to the house to try to retrieve it. R.I. did not go to the police in 1995. There was no recording, no report, no second witness in the room. It was one man telling another man something on a work site, and the other man going home with it. He carried it for the next 24 years and came forward only when the prosecutor's office reopened the file in February 2019. Investigators in 2019 took the lead seriously. They built a file on McCaffrey and reread the original 1990 reports with his name in mind, checking whether his vehicle, his work history, or his routine had ever crossed the file in any documented way. None of it had. Bank records hinted he and Lisa may have crossed paths through her job at Lakeland Bank, but no personal ties between them ever turned up. What investigators did not have was anything that could put him at the scene physically. The confession itself was hearsay, secondhand, more than 2 decades old, with no contemporaneous record. The state had a name and no case. In August 2020, the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office sent the cloth to DNA Labs International in Florida, a private lab that specialized in pulling usable profiles from material other labs had given up on. The pandemic was on. The state police and the prosecutor's office had been doubling up on old files during the year, and the McBride evidence was at the top of the queue. DNA Labs produced a result better than anything the file had ever generated. Both contributors were now visible, but the stranger's profile still was not clean enough to upload to CODIS as a search query. It could only be compared directly to a specific suspect. Over the next 5 years, the prosecutor's office worked that limitation. According to a New Jersey State Police timeline, detectives compared the profile against more than 50 specific individuals with any tie to Lisa or the case, and ran numerous polygraphs along the way. Every comparison came back negative. In March 2022, the prosecutor's office took the step it had never taken before. The team obtained a court order to exhume Lisa's remains from Restland Memorial Park in East Hanover, where she had been buried for almost 32 years. The bottleneck was Lisa's own reference sample. What had been taken from her body in 1990 had been worn down through multiple rounds of testing. To subtract her profile from the mixed sample, the lab needed something cleaner than 32-year-old reference material could provide. On Wednesday, March 9, 2022, the exhumation went forward with the family's cooperation. First Assistant Prosecutor Gregory Mueller, who was handling the case for the prosecutor's office at the time, announced the move publicly. Lisa's body was taken to Partroy Funeral Home in Parsippany, and then to the Morris Sussex Medical Examiner's Office. There, a state police forensic anthropologist worked with the office staff to conduct an examination and collect a fresh reference sample. The lab work would go to Lorton, Virginia. Lisa was returned to her grave. With Lisa's own profile isolated cleanly for the first time, the lab applied modern genotyping methods to the cloth. In late 2025, after another round of advanced work, the two contributors finally came apart completely. For the first time since 1990, the stranger had a full CODIS-ready profile. The lab uploaded the male profile to CODIS on a Friday in early February. CODIS returned a match. The hit pointed to a man living in Manteo, North Carolina, a small town on the Outer Banks roughly 500 miles south of Vernon Township. His DNA had gone into the system years earlier, in connection with something that had nothing at all to do with Lisa McBride. The name attached to the profile was the same name R.I. had given investigators 7 years earlier. By that February, Lisa had been dead for almost 36 years. For 24 of them, one other person had known what had happened. In June of 1990, Robert McCaffrey had just turned 18. He was living with his parents and brother in Franklin, New Jersey, about 13 miles and a 24-minute drive from Lisa's house in Highland Lakes, when New Jersey State Police Detective Dominic Rubino pulled his background after the CODIS match. The story went back to the year before Lisa was killed. He had enlisted in the United States Navy on July 5, 1989, at age 17. According to the DD 214 cited in the affidavit, he had gone in straight out of his teens with no real work history behind him. 20 days in, on July 25th, the Navy conducted a psychiatric evaluation that flagged serious impulse control issues and recommended he be discharged as unfit for service. A second evaluation on August 17th came back with a formal borderline personality disorder diagnosis. McCaffrey lasted less than 3 months in uniform. On September 28, 1989, the Navy issued him a dishonorable discharge. He came home to Franklin. 9 months later, Lisa was dead. In the affidavit of probable cause, Detective Rubino wrote that the items taken from Lisa's bedroom that night fit a pattern FBI behavioral analysts had documented. Things a killer keeps to relive the crime. He called them trophies of his skill and power. For the next 6 years, McCaffrey stayed in New Jersey. In 1996, he left the state and moved south. On December 20th, 1997, in Charleston, South Carolina, he married a woman named Marjorie Gale Broom. For the next 15 years, he kept no criminal record of any kind. His wife had no idea what he had done in 1990, and neither did the children they raised together. The path that put his DNA into CODIS started with his wife. By 2012, the McCaffreys were living in West Ashley, a neighborhood in Charleston, with their 2 children, ages 10 and 4. Marjorie went by her middle name, Gail. She was 36 years old. On the night of March 17, 2012, the two of them had an argument at their home on Limestone Boulevard. According to a Charleston County Sheriff's Office summary of his statement, things grew heated. Robert said he went for a walk to give his wife time to calm down. When he came back, he said she was still upset, so he left the house and drove to the upstate region while the children slept. When he returned a second time, he said Gail was gone, and a farewell letter she had written was waiting for him on the kitchen counter. Her family reported her missing the next day, and Charleston County detectives examined the letter. It had been typed instead of handwritten, and the language and the profanity didn't sound like Gail. Investigators concluded the letter had been fabricated. Robert became the primary suspect. Detectives questioned him at length, and his story didn't hold together. He couldn't reconcile the trip to the upstate with the timing of when he had left and come back, or explain the gaps in between. Gail's family told investigators she would never have walked out on her children. Everything pointed away from her and toward the man who claimed to have found the note, but the case against him was thin. Charleston County never recovered Gail's body. There was no confirmed crime scene, no blood, no witnesses who had seen or heard anything from the house on Limestone Boulevard that night. A grand jury declined to indict him on murder. Prosecutors weren't done. They could not prove he had killed his wife. They could prove he had lied to the people looking for her. In 2014, Charleston County deputies arrested McCaffrey on a charge of obstruction of justice. Intake at the county jail included a cheek swab, the way it does for every felony booking. Technicians ran the swab, built McCaffrey's profile, and uploaded it to CODIS. He went to trial on the obstruction charge in 2019. The jury convicted him. The court sentenced him to 10 years in prison, and he waived parole consideration, which meant no early release. In 2018, while he sat in prison for lying about what had happened to his wife, a South Carolina court legally declared Gail dead. Her body has never been recovered, and their 2 children grew up without their mother. Nobody has ever been charged with her murder. In May of 2023, the state released him on supervised re-entry. From there, he moved to Manteo, on the outer banks of Dare County, North Carolina, and settled into a quiet life on the coast. His sentence ran with that profile already in the database. The conviction came down with it already in the database. His release came with it already in the database. The match to a New Jersey homicide was sitting in the system the entire time he was in custody. What it was waiting on was a lab method that hadn't been invented yet, when Charleston County booked him in 2014. The Sussex County Prosecutor's Office moved on the match immediately. Detective Dominic Rubino prepared a 40-page search warrant affidavit. Vernon Township Judge Peter Lamers signed it on the 6th. 4 days later, on the afternoon of Friday, April 10, 2026, a multi-state task force put the warrant in motion. Officers from the New Jersey State Police, the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office, and the Dare County Sheriff's Office moved on McCaffrey at around 5:30 p.m. during a traffic stop conducted by the Nags Head Police Department in Dare County, North Carolina. The official arrest was logged shortly after 8 p.m. There was no attempt to run or resist. He retained a public defender on the spot and waived his right to contest extradition to New Jersey. While he was being processed, North Carolina Superior Court Judge Andy Womble issued a separate search warrant for his residence in Manteo. Officers searched the house, the shed, and 2 vehicles. The team was looking for the trophies, the items Detective Rubino had described in the affidavit. None of them surfaced. What did surface was something else. Officers found a laptop tucked into the crawl space under the house. They pulled 2 black hatchets out of one of the vehicles. Spread through the property were 5 firearms, 2 handguns, and 3 collapsible single-shot pistols designed for extreme concealment. As a convicted felon, he was not legally allowed to own any of them. Notepads and multiple cell phones went into the inventory alongside the rest. He was held at the Dare County Detention Center pending transport. On April 20th, in a Sussex County courtroom, McCaffrey was arraigned on first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, and second-degree burglary. He pleaded not guilty. The court remanded him to Morris County Correctional Facility while he awaited trial. At a detention hearing the following Monday, Sussex County Superior Court Judge Janine Allen ordered him held without bail pending trial. Assistant Prosecutor Jerome Neidhart walked the court through the state's argument. He cited the washcloth from Lisa's headboard, the DNA match, the 1995 confession RI had brought forward. The primary evidence for probable cause is that DNA, Neidhart told the court. DNA doesn't wear out. It doesn't lie. McCaffrey's attorney, Thomas Militano, pushed back. He questioned the validity of the DNA testing and the medical examiner's homicide ruling. The defense was not conceding the DNA test was accurate, Militano told the court. Judge Allen ruled for the state. She cited the South Carolina obstruction conviction as her primary concern. The fact he was convicted of such a charge is concerning in that he has obstructed a criminal justice process, she said. I am also concerned about whether he would try to obstruct by speaking to witnesses, especially the witness identified by the initials RI New Jersey had abolished the death penalty in 2007. The most serious sentence available on the murder charge was life in prison without parole. A pre-indictment conference was scheduled for May 18, 2026, in Sussex County Superior Court, with McCaffrey held at Morris County Correctional while the state moved toward a grand jury. Sussex County Prosecutor Daniel M. Perez announced the arrest in a statement the day after McCaffrey was taken into custody. He credited the break to advances in DNA technology and what he called the relentless investigative efforts of the state police, his own office, and the Vernon Township Police Department. The arrest, he said, brought long-awaited progress toward justice for the family of Lisa Marie McBride. Vernon Mayor Anthony Rossi praised the detective squad and the prosecutor's office for staying with the work for decades. Doug McBride released a statement on behalf of the family on April 21st. He wrote that it had been almost 36 years since the family was told Lisa had never made it to work, and that they could never have imagined the horror and pain that would follow. They had lived for weeks, then months, then years, then decades, without justice for Lisa, and with questions they had thought would never be answered. The statement called the news of an arrest strange and bittersweet. Doug thanked the Vernon Township Police Department, the New Jersey State Police, and the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office for the work they had done across more than 3 decades. Their perseverance, he wrote, had made the day possible. Then he wrote about his parents. Norma and George, Lisa's parents, never lost hope that this day would come. Doug said, "Unfortunately, they are no longer with us. But we know that they are resting a bit easier now. They remain devoted to finding justice for their daughter for their entire lives. And without their efforts, we may not be able to provide this update today." The family declined to speak further with reporters. A folded washcloth on a bare headboard in a small house on Glen Road. 2 DNA profiles mixed together on a single piece of cloth, sitting in evidence for 36 years. One belonged to Lisa. The other belonged to a man whose own genetic profile had been sitting in the same national database for 12 of those years, until a lab in Florida finally found a way to query against it. If this case stayed with you, leave your thoughts in the comments. More solved cases in the playlist.